Good morning, everyone. We're continuing now with our brand new series called Money Magnetism. So let's begin with the prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, dearest friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Guide us. Make your wisdom known. Help us to live always in constant awareness that you are with us, that we are not alone. Make us aware of your loving presence within our hearts, your voice speaking through our friends, through the natural world, through the whispers of our own conscience. We are your children. Guide and bless us always. Om. Peace. Amen. Yesterday I made reference to the book Two Souls, Four Lives, which I did actually have on my shelf behind me, but I didn't see it. So I just wanted to hold this book up. If you haven't read it, it's a fascinating and interesting read. Just the parallels between the incarnation of Paramhansa Yogananda and William the Conqueror, who he said he was, and Swami Kriyananda and William's son Henry. It was written by Catherine Kairavi. She did years of research to bring the spiritual and the historical together. So it's really a fabulous, fabulous book. So we're working with this little book of Swami's, Money Magnetism. The current cover looks a little different. Crystal Clarity is in the state of being reorganized at the moment, so Crystal Clarity is our publishing company. So I'm not sure exactly what the availability of this book is, but I know, because I tried, if you just go onto the internet, you'll be able to find at least used copies here and there. I don't, even no matter what cover it has, it's been the same book for a long time. There was an earlier version called How to Use Money for Your Own Highest Good, or for your own and others' highest good. But this one is 1992, and anything after that. Okay, it's a little too long for me to just sit and read every word like I've been doing with some of the materials I've had. So I'm going to just sort of take the essential themes. I'm going to be turning the pages of the book, going, through the same story that Swami told, but I'm not going to be reading out of the text like I have sometimes. I believe Swami himself made an audio book of this. I might sort of go a little puzzle like that. I'm not sure. I don't want to tell you that he did if he didn't. I'll try to research it and see if it does exist and if that one would be available too. This is the kind of book, this and the Material Success course also, where the audio book is something that would be especially valuable, because what Swamiji is communicating when he's talking about money magnetism and material success, it's a state of consciousness, and that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today. And so when Swami reads it, he's reading the instructions, the advice, the concepts with the state of consciousness that he's trying to inspire in us through those words. So when you listen to him read it, you're picking up not only the ideas, but you're also picking up the vibration. And the vibration is really the purpose of the ideas, is to change your vibration. I had a very interesting experience with Swamiji. Well, I've had this many times, but this was the time that I really began to appreciate it. It was a particularly I don't know, it was a particularly explicit example of what I knew to be true. He was speaking in our temple here in Palo Alto. He often gave satsangs because we have the major international airport, the closest to the village. So he would often go in and out of the country from the San Francisco airport, which is 30 minutes from here. And so he was giving a satsang in our temple, and I was sitting in the front row, as I often like to do. And he was speaking, and when Swami would speak, I would try as hard as I could to be completely in the moment and just receive the words word by word as he offered them. And perhaps it was because I was concentrating especially deeply that day, but I felt that what Swamiji projected to us. Now, let me also add, when Swami would give us instruction for how to, present these teachings in public, he very rarely, in fact, I can hardly remember, at least not for me, he never talked to me about concepts of the teachings. He talked about the magnetism and the vibration that we had when we spoke. And he talked about filling the room with your magnetism and giving people master's vibrations, which is the vibration of the consciousness of what we're trying to say. And somehow that particular day, I could feel that Swami was projecting a vibration first, and then he was finding the words that matched that vibration. And it was almost like there was a slowdown in the time loop. And I felt the magnetism and the vibration first, and then I would hear words. And I could feel that Swami himself could feel the magnetism and the vibration first, and then he found the words. He himself talked about that when he talked about um, creativity. He didn't talk about it in quite those words, but he talked about, especially when he would write music, he would have a very, very clear idea of the consciousness he wanted to convey, and then the melody would come to him. And he said the melodies came effortlessly. The effort was to be crystal clear on what consciousness he wanted to convey. And once he had that, the melody would follow naturally from it. So that's, again, what I felt when in the context of words, when he was giving out the vibration first. On occasion, I've felt, that sounds like it's too infrequently, especially toward the end of his life. I felt much of the time Swamiji was just giving a vibration. And then he would he taught very differently in those years toward the end, the last decade or more. And he often, especially in the last years, no matter what he was supposed to, whatever the topic was, he would end up just talking about Master, about meeting Master, what it meant to be his disciple. And it seemed to me, and this is just me reflecting on it, this is not a divinely clear statement, but it's how it felt to me, is that that's what Swami had to give us, was his discipleship. And he would just give us his discipleship, and then he would just almost randomly attach words to whatever it was, so that, because we were used to getting words. He was not mon, he was not silent. So we were used to words. So he would give us his vibration, then he would give us words, because we seemed to need words. So he would give us words. So what I'm wanting to talk about, and all of this is relevant to it, is what is magnetism. Swami calls this approach to prosperity, money, magnetism. And in that title and in that singular word, there's the orientation. In so much of what Swami teaches, in so much of the way he presents the teachings, and it's just what I was saying before, many people are good teachers. And I'm not thinking of Ananda, I'm just thinking of the world. People are good teachers, they're good communicators, because they're very good with words, and they can put words together in really positive ways, and there's energy behind those words and a degree of magnetism. But it's the ideas are what they're presenting, and oftentimes then they write in a very comprehensive way, and they explain every idea down to the last part of it. Swami's way of writing, first of all, he always said his writing was seminal. And what he means by that is that it has the essential elements in it from which much more can grow. But it's not like, as he himself said, I mean, even like this is a very small book. He wrote a bigger book about material success later. But his Education for Life book, for example, is not very long. And it's a whole radical approach to education. His book on leadership is a very small book. It's even smaller than this one. But it's seminal. If you can grasp the essential concepts, and if you're in tune with them, and if they resonate with who you are, then they become the creative seed in which it becomes obvious to you what you're supposed to do next. This is what I have gradually come to realize after a lifetime of following Swamiji as the pole star. And I was talking about it in, I don't even remember which concept, so I'll just have to, which context, so I'll just have to give up saying that. But when, in 1987, when I shifted from Ananda Village to Silicon Valley, where I've been ever since, and had the responsibility with others of trying to really see how much of Ananda we could replicate away from the village. The village was the only fully developed Ananda at that point. We had ashrams in a couple of other cities. It was not that we had nothing else, but it was a real challenge to see. And actually, I guess Ocean Song was going at that point also. Ocean Song was another rural community. But the experience I had in developing this work here, which actually still goes on to this day, is that ideas just come to me. And over time, I can look back and see that those ideas were the vibration of what I learned from Swamiji. And I have always had the feeling that I have never confronted a situation in which I couldn't draw upon something that I had experienced with him that expressed to me how I should respond to this. But I realize it's partly the sheer enormity of the ideas that Swamiji shared, but it's also because the essential magnetism, if you have the essential magnetism, then your own creative energy will come after that, and your own creative ideas will match that magnetism, and the magnetism is really where what the power comes from. So let me spend a little bit of time here on just even what the concept of magnetism is. So what we have to move back to is we have to move to the word energy. Now, it's very interesting, and it's not irrelevant to this whole discussion, that we are moving from the age of matter into the age of energy. That's the difference between Kali Yuga and Dwapara Yuga. Kali is matter, Dwapara is energy. The word Dwapara only means second. It's the second yuga. But the characteristic of Dwapara is energy. And if you look at what shifted on our planet since the end of Kali and the beginning of Dwapara, which would have been 1900, it's all about energy. It's all about finding all these other sources of energy. And in Kali Yuga, the only way that people could do things was physically. And even when cars started, and I've said this many times, but it's illustrative, when cars were first invented, the power of a car engine was measured in horsepower. And I don't even know if they still use those words anymore. But because the only way people could think about moving a vehicle forward was as if it were pulled by horses. And so if you had 5 horses, you could go much faster than if you had 1 horse. So an engine was defined in horsepower. It was 2 horsepower, it was 10 horsepower. And then the Kali Yuga mind could grasp, at least could picture what the effect of this energy source is now with the internet, with our computers, with our Apple Watches, with our personal devices, our tablets, all of these different things with just electricity, just flipping the electricity on and off. We don't really have any clear concept of where that energy is coming from. We just know that it's there, because this is the age of energy, and we just assume there's all this energy. And what it's done, it's liberated us to a remarkable extent from the burden of the physical world. We can fly across the country. We can talk to someone on the other side of the world. We can get in a car and whiz down the highway. We can travel great distances in very, very short periods of time. I even have an electric bicycle. Even when I take something as simple as a bicycle, my bicycle has a little motor on it. So even when I'm so-called bicycling, all the tough guys on their fancy rigs, this little old lady looking like a Victorian just sitting up on her bike just whizzes right past them. They always look surprised, and then I have to shout as I go by, electric, like this. Everybody's getting used to it now, so it's not so unusual. But we have a whole different relationship to energy. But, and also, central to Master's entire message is this whole different relationship to energy. And Master's original contribution to the teachings of yoga and the teachings of self-realization is what he calls the energization exercises. I mean, they're completely consistent with orthodoxy, but they're Master's original contribution. And if one follows this particular path of self-realization, doing the energization exercises every day, or in some people several times a day, is part of how we attune ourselves to this new consciousness that's coming. And when we and Master was able, because people's minds are much more subtle now, the planet is more subtle, he's able to present a great deal of this teaching simply in terms of energy, the quantity, the quality of energy, whether it's outward energy or inward energy, whether it emanates from the world around us or whether we generate that energy from inside of us. And Master constantly made a powerful point over how much energy we have within us. When he lectured, it was said he would pinch his hand, just a little bit of flesh like this, and say, there's enough energy in a pinch of human flesh to power the city of Chicago, to keep it in electricity for a week. And you would sort of look at this and look at the city of Chicago and try to put these points together. And that's why he gave us the energization exercises, where we are training ourselves. I mean, we use our physical body. It's a series of 30-some exercises that takes about 12 to 15 minutes to do, depending how quickly you do them. And it involves, by the conscious act of will, we do it without props. We're not lifting heavy things. If you're given something very heavy to lift, you would use willpower to lift it, but you would use that willpower in relationship to a material object. So there would still be this sense of material relationship. The energization exercises are done without any props, and all we have is our decision to direct our willpower to increase the energy, to draw from the infinite cosmic source of energy through our bodies. But it's not physical. We use our bodies to train our willpower, because the physical body is accessible to us and it's measurable. You can tense the physical body and you can feel the muscle vibrating with energy. Then by willpower, you can also consciously withdraw that energy, because it's not just to be filled with energy, it's to bring that energy under our conscious control. So these are not calisthenics. They're not even yoga postures. It's purely an exercise of the relationship between willpower and energy. Because when we understand the relationship between willpower and energy, we basically have the key not only to the spiritual world, but also to the material world. We use it for the spiritual world because our point of focus, our ability to concentrate, our capacity to observe and concentrate on the breath and the opposite forces that are constantly trying to distract us from doing that, or making us sleepy when we meditate, or making us unwilling to meditate. This is also a question of willpower. So we use our physical body to train the willpower to be able to direct energy, so that when we separate ourselves in consciousness from the physical body by completely making it still, we can still direct our energy by the use of willpower, in this case to the spiritual eye, upward to the spirit, to penetrate through the illusion of this world into a deeper, more everlasting reality. That's what we're working with. Now, just a moment. I lost my thought. Let me just find it for a minute. So all of it, energy and willpower. Now, the result of a flow of energy, and my scientific knowledge is limited to about what I'm going to say, but when electricity goes through a wire, a magnetic field is created by the movement of energy. And this part I do know. We meet people, energetic people tend to be magnetic. And people who have low energy don't have much magnetism either. Magnetism is the result of a flow of energy that creates a vortex. If there's a flow of energy, it creates a vortex. And a vortex, by its nature, draws things into it. Now, Swamiji was a tremendously magnetic person. He was magnetic on so many different levels. He could draw inspiration from the infinite. He could draw words to express his ideas from the ether. He could draw joy out of any situation. He magnetized a tremendous amount of love and friendship from everyone around him because his energy was always flowing in this upward dynamic manner. And as a consequence, there was a vortex of magnetism around him. This is what I experienced in his presence. This is what I felt the moment I saw him. He was so magnetic, and his magnetism just drew me into the state of consciousness that I myself had been searching for and barely knew existed. I mean, I vaguely knew from the philosophical books I'd read, but I'd never seen it. I'd never felt it. And I mean, I guess magnetism is exactly the word. I was absolutely magnetized to him. And from that moment, the whole rest of my life has flowed because his magnetism was so wonderful. Now, don't think that magnetism is like imposed upon you. It's actually just the opposite. It inspires us. What Swami's magnetism did. Now, magnetism can also be dark. Dark people can have magnetism that overcomes your willpower. Swami's magnetism awakened our willpower. And when I moved to Ananda Village and had the opportunity to be in closer association with Swamiji, it was the most magnetic option on the whole planet for me. It was just as simple as that. I spent quite a lot of time with Swamiji during those first years. He took me very soon into, he asked me to work for him, and I just had the opportunity to be there quite a lot. And there was absolutely nothing anywhere on the planet that was more attractive to me than to be in Swami's company because of what it awoke in me. This is what is very important to understand. His magnetism changed my magnetism into what I wanted my magnetism to be, which was joyful and energetic and creative and optimistic, just sort of all the positive things you could think about. When I was with Swamiji, and this was true to the end of his life, whenever I was with him, there was just no part of me wanted to be anywhere else. It was just, as I've said in other contexts, he was the geographic center of the globe. And it was very disconcerting and then gradually, oddly liberating when he left the planet and the globe no longer had a geographic center. Even though I was months separated from Swami, I didn't live with him after 1987, didn't live in the same community that he lived in after 1987, which was pretty much a long time ago. But wherever he was, I always knew where he was, and that was always, and I didn't even realize it till after he passed. That was, I'll use the word, it was the magnetic center of the planet, because it was the point from which everything else emanated. It was the core magnetism. And when he died, when he left this world, at first I was quite disconcerted. Of course, I mean, we all knew he was going to breathe his last at any moment. So even though he passed away without much warning, I got a phone call at, I believe, 11 p.m. at night that he was having trouble breathing, and 11:15 that he'd left his body. That was how much notice there was. But nonetheless, it was still not a surprise because his health had been poor for so long, and he'd been telling us for a very long time. He left on April 21st, 2013. Now let me get the words right. But of course, I was sorry. As I said to him, it won't be any fun to be on this planet after you're gone. His answer to me was, I know, I've been through it. Meaning when Master left his body after only 3.5 years for Swamiji. But afterwards, as I started to say, when I got used to it, it was strangely liberating, because it was just one more, suddenly the whole world was the same. Whereas there had always been a very strong duality, where Swami was, where Swami wasn't. The world was absolutely divided up into two parts. And after Swami died, he was everywhere. There was no physical limitation anymore. That had always been true, but still, where he physically was different. Now, the end of all of this, which is a long thing, is when I was with Swamiji, I had to be more of who I wanted to be, because his magnetism just demanded it. It was like that vortex itself lifted, just made me be wide awake, be much more conscious. And Swami was attentive too. He was always kind, but he never let, certainly never let me get away with sloppy thinking. Well, of course, I don't know how many times he didn't correct me, but he constantly corrected me. And always in a way that was cheerful and encouraging, not down-putting. But it was absolutely necessary. His magnetism, in order to be in that magnetic field, I had to raise my energy, because that I had to match it. Otherwise, I couldn't be in that field. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called me into that field. He called me into that field because I was deeply desirous of, and by his grace, I was able to operate at least in some relationship to that magnetism. But it was exceedingly real. You just could not go to sleep around him. That's the only way I want to say it. And I don't mean literally physically sleep. Although when he was under the same roof that I'm under, which, because he often was a guest in our home, I didn't sleep very much. It was partly because I was always thinking about the next meal and what was needed, and so I was always having to get up and do something because I realized something was needed. But also, I just didn't sleep much because there was just too much magnetism in the air. Now let me go where I'm trying to go. I guess I'm really just trying to start with the right premise. Okay, so now we come to the simple fact. Money is energy. We think of it as a material thing, but money is a manifestation of energy. Energy and magnetism are intimately tied together. So when we're talking about money magnetism, we're talking about putting out the right kind of energy, so it will generate the right kind of magnetism, so that that energy can manifest in this particular form. And if we think that somehow this is an external reality, as I was talking about yesterday about Swami's Material Success Course, and as he mentions even in here, to a certain extent you can manipulate the physical world in order to allow you to accumulate money. But what Swami wants to teach us, and this is exactly how he puts it, this book is not about accumulating money, although that may be the accidental result of it. This book is about how to attract what you need. And you see, that's much more dynamic, because what you accumulate is a physical reality that's depending on the material world. What you can attract is dependent on our willpower to generate the energy, to develop the magnetism, to be able to cause the universe to respond. Because the other aspect of this being a material universe, an energy universe, is all that we're looking at that appears to be material is not material at all. It's just a pattern of energy. Everything. This is physics. It's just a pattern of energy. And energy is changed by the application of magnetism and energy moving in the direction that we want. That's where I'm going to start tomorrow. So, God bless you, my friends.